Hi there YouTube, this is Gordon back once again with another tech video. This time I'm going to talk about how to actually connect the M cable up to the processing unit. So you might notice here, this is the PSVR processing unit. I've unplugged all the cables from it and you can see, this is just the extension end. Normally in here you would plug in your PSVR itself, but we don't really need that to show you how to connect it up to the box because we're going to connect it directly up to here. Okay, so if I take the M cable, I know one of the ways you might be trying to connect it up is actually plugging it into the back. So going into where it says PS4 end, into here, and then taking the source end and actually putting that into the PlayStation 4 itself. Now, I wouldn't particularly advise doing it this way. I tend to find that although you've got the USB cable connected and you've got the HDMI connected correctly, what tends to happen is power doesn't get to the output end before the HDMI signal, and whenever that happens, you tend to get one of two things. You'll either get a black screen, so you don't get anything displayed at all, or you'll just get a normal HDMI pass-through, which means you don't get any of the upscaling benefits from the cable, so you actually lose all of that extra quality you're trying to gain by using it. So what I tend to do to actually get it connected up and get max benefit, if you unplug it from the back, actually plug it into the front. So what you do is you take your cable 4, and if I just slide this back as it does, just unplug the right hand side. You'll find if you do try and plug it in the left hand side, you can't anyway because it's a proprietary connection. This is Sony's special connection I've got here on the HDMI, so it actually doesn't fit. And I'm assuming that's just to distinguish between audio and video. So since we're going to connect it to the video output, we can use the right hand side. So we'll just take the source end again, plug it in, and then this is where things like your coupler come into question. So I'm going to use the U-Green coupler. This is the one I picked up on Amazon. It's in the description of the other video if you want to get the same one. I found it works absolutely fine. So you just take the output end, plug it into one end of the coupler, and then take the other end of the cable. This is the one that goes back into the extension cable, and just connect it up. Oops, it's upside down. And just connect that back into the coupler, and then what you'll find is you get your upscaling through the cable. It just passes it through and it goes all around into the headset itself. And the reason I like doing it this way is because you've got to get power to the USB socket. The HDMI signal doesn't go through until you start turning on the headset. And in that way I've always had more success. It's always upscaled and it always looks absolutely fantastic. Now what you might notice is a couple of things can happen when you first put the headset on. One, the very first time you turn it on, you might just get a black screen. Don't panic. All it means is that power hasn't quite got to the output end before the HDMI signal, and the easy way to fix that is just to power cycle the PSVR headset itself. So just turn it off, turn it on again, and you should find that upscaling's gone straight through. And again, similarly, if you do turn it on and you don't see any of the upscaling properties, just power cycle the headset and it should be working absolutely fantastic. Worst case scenario, the step that comes straight from Marseille themselves, they recommend sometimes just unplugging the source end, plugging it back in, and that actually resets the processing end, so that'll actually reboot it and get it going again. Now what you might notice, very first time you actually turn on the headset, you get some static, just for a split second, and that's perfectly normal, and hello Space Cat. That'll happen a couple of different times. It generally happens first time you turn the headset on, just move it out of the way, and it also happens when you go from 2D to 3D, so basically when the signal changes again, so when you start a game, but you'll not see it again throughout the gameplay, and that's all there is to it really. If you have any, well, one thing I did want to talk about, just whilst I get Space Cat out of the way, if you are having connection problems, which sometimes you do get from the front ports of the PS4 Pro, they're notoriously a bit weird. This is Space Cat's bigger brother. My cats like to interfere a lot. What you might find is the front ports, as I say, that they're a bit flaky, notoriously so. There's been quite a lot of complaints on Reddit about they're not always reliable. You don't always get power to them, or maybe you're just not getting enough. You can just take something like an old phone charger and just plug the USB into that. As long as you're getting the 5 volts, you'll be absolutely fine. Just plug it into a wall, and you'll be absolutely golden. And you've got to be careful, don't use the newer chargers, the ones that do the fast charge. They actually could potentially put too much voltage through, and again that could blow the chip, so you don't want to do that. So make sure it's definitely like an older model. lastly, just to come back to one thing, I know I've talked about using these switches, so if you are going to actually plug it into the back end, because you want to try and get that social screen boost, the best way to do that's going to be, again, coming back using dedicated power. So you've got dedicated power going to the cable first. But if you do use a switch, you've got to be careful, because these switches, they do actually take power from the HDMI cable itself, so it could potentially output power. And again, if it outputs too much power to the processing chip, you could be looking at a blown chip, which you want to avoid. So all I'm really saying is, if you're gonna plug the cable into the back, you want dedicated power, so you definitely get the benefits when you first turn it all on. And secondly, plug it directly into the PlayStation 4. Don't go through a switch. If you've got any queries, like I say, just hit me up in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or you can find me on Twitter, which will be in the details in the description. And if you watched it all the way through, thanks very much for watching. Hope my cats didn't disrupt it too much for you.